Good morning, dear friends. Hello to those of you joining us out on the internet. How's the sound now? Is that okay? Yay, good. Sunny Sunday morning. What good fortune we have to be able to come together and sit, swim around in the Dharma for a while. I'd like to begin today in a familiar fashion, which is to invite you to do one of two things. One is to simply sit and stay silent, if you want. The other is to turn to a neighbor, introduce yourself, and tell them one thing you like about being alive. Maybe two. Be profligate. So please have a moment to do that. I like you. Anybody here for the first time? Come on. Great. Come on in, have a seat. You can sit on the floor, you can sit on the chair. One of my favorite little clever lines is the Buddha sat on the ground because he was from a small village in North India. Imagine if he had come from Bolivia or Ecuador and he'd been squatting when he woke up. All the statues would be this squatting man. So, refuge in the Buddha, what could that possibly mean? there is something totally mysterious happening here that for the most part I forget about. But then on occasion I remember, particularly when I speak about the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Are you awake? Are you aware? Is there awareness? How do you do that? I don't have the least idea. Nobody has the least idea. People think they're going to have computers become aware. That's madness. They'll get really smart and they'll be able to tell where we are and control us pretty well, but aware? So aware, we take it for granted, hi. But that was the Buddha's extraordinary discovery, was that awareness exists and that awareness is what frees us. And so it's essential that we start observing awareness itself. It's hard because it's kind of like the eyeball seeing itself. You can't, but you can know you're aware. For instance, please become aware that you're seeing. There was seeing and now there's awareness of seeing. How do we do that? Nobody has the least idea, but we can do it. That's the Buddha. That awakeness, that awareness. And then the Dharma is, what do we find? What's noticed? What natural laws become apparent? Things arise and pass away. Things have effects. That's the Dharma, the law of karma, the last one. And the Sangha, take a moment to look around. I was going to do a different practice this morning where those who wanted to would stand and meet one another and say, I see you, but I couldn't find music. I couldn't get the music to work, so I didn't go there. At the community meeting, I had a slideshow, created a slideshow, and I had all you need is love. And they blocked it on YouTube because the owners of that wouldn't let it be shown. So I had to edit that out and put in a different piece. So anyway, Sangha, look around, take a moment, look around. This is the community of practice. These are fellow human beings who have the same issues we do, primarily a human body and mind. And we need each other. So that's what we're reminding ourselves of with this now song. It used to be a chant for a long time. So I invite you to join in. Is that coming out that way? There it is. Yeah? I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Sambuddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. And so now we have the opportunity to stop. It's possible to make meditation into lots of work. Let's control the breath this way or that way. Let's create an image of a particular kind. Let's try the impossible task of ridding the mind of thoughts. Let's hold our bodies tight and breathe a particular way, or we can start with one big question mark. What's happening here? When one of the great elders of the Theravada Buddhist tradition in the West, Ajahn Sumedho, went to be with Ajahn Chah, his teacher in Thailand. One of the reasons he chose to stay, or two of the reasons he chose to stay with Ajahn Chah, were that the old master said, if you come to practice here, I'm not going to treat you any differently because you're not Thai. And the second was, no books, no reading for at least 2 years. Sumedho was a Westerner, academic. He'd been to college. And he liked that idea, no books. And Ajahn Chah said, the Eightfold Path is this: 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose, a tongue, the feeling body, and a mind. Watch these, observe these. This is the Eightfold Path. And of course, there are lots of strategies of how and where to pay attention, to use this capacity of awareness. The one where we usually begin is mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing. To notice that, in fact, the body breathes. It's been doing this since the moment your mother could no longer breathe for you. So you can stabilize the mind by bringing it to the sensations in the chest and abdomen of breathing in and breathing out. And it's skillful and important to differentiate between an imagination of breathing and the actual sensations of breathing. The breathing has a beginning. It doesn't exist, and then it comes into being. There's an expansion, and then a reaching fullness, and then a decline, and then a vanishing. Making this determination to stay with breathing makes apparent the fact that something the mind wanders off or flies off or is preoccupied with a conversation or gets caught in self-criticism of why I can't meditate better, or is excited about something that might be happening this afternoon. Or gets colored by a desire or a disliking. This is the normal human mind. And it's why we begin with a question mark, because if we're practicing with a question mark, everything is valuable. Everything is of great importance for teaching us what being in contact with reality is. Oh, this is happening. Now I'm coming back to the breath. Oh, wandering is happening. Coming back. And so we rest in awareness and in whatever arises in this present moment. Meditation of this kind is the exact opposite of what we are encouraged to do in our lives, particularly in modernity. We're taught and encouraged to do crazy things like multitasking. To never just sit and do nothing, but to check one's Snapchat or email, or at least be listening to music. And so here we're doing this very normal human thing, but not so much in the modern world, of sitting and doing nothing except being awake. At first, this can be pretty darn hard. Particularly because it reveals what's going on in the mind and body. So if there's anything in the mind that we really don't want to have come to the foreground, there it is. If we've been trying to avoid some mood or some realization, some emotion, some thoughts by staying busy and distracted, suddenly there they are, right in the foreground. So it's quite a task to learn to embrace everything, one little bit at a time. However, we have a couple of very potent tools. One is concentration. Focusing in on the breath. And the other is awareness, awakeness, mindfulness. Noticing what's happening. There are strategies and a theoretical model of how to meditate. Guidance. It's also an art that we master over time. Another framework we can practice with is to know that the foundation of meditation is love. Where we understand love to be that there's room for everything. There's room for all of ourselves and others. Summarized in the simple statement, I aspire to love and accept myself exactly as I am in this moment. Just like this moment is like this. Breathing in, breathing out. In love, there's room for everything. Can you welcome that which is presenting itself as you, this body-mind, a little, a lot? If it's a little and there's resistance, then we accept that too. After a little while, discomfort builds up in the body. This is normal. We sit with it consciously for a little while and then notice how the disliking happens. And we may choose to move, but before moving, notice, why am I moving? It's because this discomfort is difficult to bear. So please now become aware of where your body touches the cushion or the floor. Notice the mystery of how you can somehow direct awareness now into your left hand or into the index finger of your left hand. It can be quite precise. The knuckle of the index finger of your left hand. Or direct awareness to hearing and notice that hearing is happening. Sounds, hearing. Perhaps notice the entirety of your body as it sits here. All the way from your toes, legs, pelvis, torso, hands, arms, neck, face, head. This body is life. And bringing awareness into that place where the eyes exist, notice that there's life there, sensations. And then watching, knowing, as in the mind, somehow you intend for the eyes to open. And then let that happen. And watch how seeing begins with No volition on your part at all. It just happens. Seeing. Mindful of seeing. And then maybe there's a little stiffness, maybe there's an impulse to move, so then let's let that happen. Stretching. It occurred to me I haven't, for quite a long time, had a raising of hands for mental states. Please raise your hand if you experienced desire during this period. Take a moment to look around. Really. Wanting something. Okay, hands down. How about if you observed the opposite of disliking, wanting something not to occur? Right. How about restlessness, agitation, worry? How about sloth and torpor, dull? Connie, are you voting for sloth and torpor, dullness? How about doubt? It's like, does this work? What am I doing here? How about sadness? Sadness. Fear, loneliness, joy, delight, bliss, pleasant body sensations. It's busy, isn't it? Who had their mind stay on the breath every second? Not so likely. Well, I'm going to break with tradition this morning in terms of the order of our events. Avi's away, so I get to do the announcements. And there's good news and there's bad news. And there's things you didn't expect. Many of you have heard us talking for, well, in some cases years actually, but a year ago almost, we finally got into fundraising to build a ramp, right? You've heard this. And we were at the end, we were getting close to the end of the licensing, not the licensing, the permit process. And the question came back, are there offices underneath the Dharma Hall? Why, yes, when we bought the building, there were these offices. And they said, well, there's no permits for those offices. Lucky Farmer Brown, poor Farmer Brown. So then as we're proceeding, and we don't know yet what's really going to happen, but as we're proceeding, if we need to permit them, that means we're doing a modification to more than 50% of the building property, which means that it triggers a required seismic upgrade. So in our fundraising last year, we had the seismic upgrade, part of it, but we stopped when we got the ramp process together because that was enough. It was hard work raising all that money. We did raise $44,000. So it's possible that we may need to go back to the drawing board and raise some more funds to seismically upgrade, which we could groan about, but then if the really big one or even a moderate one came after we did it and the building stood, we'd say, wow, wasn't that lucky that the city required that? So, and I'd like to brag for a moment. When I got this news, I didn't have 1 second of upset. It was quite odd. I thought, well, you never know, do you? You never know. Danny, you'll like this joke. Every year for 20 years, the rabbi wakes up at 6 in the morning. His light comes on. 6:20, his door opens. He walks across the square to the synagogue, and it's clockwork every day for 20 years. And on the 20th year, he's walking across the square, and the Cossack rides up and says, "Rebbe, where are you going?" And he says, "Don't know." "What do you mean you don't know? I have watched for 20 years. You get up at the same time. Your door opens at the same time. You walk across the square. You're up to no good." So he grabs him and hauls him off to jail and shoves him in the jail cell. And as his back hits the wall and he lands on the bed, he says, "See, you just never know." And that's true. We never know. So we'll be talking about fundraising. And one piece of that, with Gregory Malouf coming on in the next week or two, is that we do need to increase our funding base from last year by 15%. So if you're a regular donor and you'd like to support this thing, go online and increase your donation by 15% or 20 or whatever feels good for you. And of course, blessedly here, none of it's required, right? If you want to sign up for a class and you're hesitant, maybe finances are not a strong suit right now, always sign up anyway if you want to sign up, because in the sign up process you'll see there's the amount when you get online. You get to the page, and then it says there's the suggested donation, and then there's my scholarship fee. And so you can write yourself a scholarship. As it turns out, we've been doing that since the beginning. As it turns out, I don't know how to say this, it's complicated. We give 20% of classes as scholarships. So it's not a bad percentage. It's a nice percentage, actually. So if everyone paid the full fee, we'd have 20% more. But you just never know. So other announcements. April 20th, Buddhist movie night. April 20th, our one and only Jim Dalton Qigong half day. April 20th. Is there still room in the class? Oh, we're April. Jeez. As my kids would have said as teenagers, I knew that. So what date is it? What's today? Where should I start? Start in May. First Sunday of the month, Saturday day long with Doug Pullen, coming up on the 4th. Every first Sunday, I do a newcomer orientation at 9. Sunday, May the 5th, is the next meeting of the Engaging the Dharma initiative. Oh, yes, second Sunday, May 12th, PMC potluck. And Tuesday, May 14th, monthly NVC practice group with Doyle and Kirsten. Dharma consults, if you'd like to meet with Jim for a few minutes after this meeting to help you with your practice, that will be a good thing to do if you want. I have a class that finally got listed. It's not this next Wednesday, but the Wednesday following, and it's a meditation and reading group using the book The Breakthrough by Ajahn Amaro. And it will be another class in the style that I like to do them, in which there's a lot of engagement and talking and practice. And it's an incredible book in terms of describing you could call them the subtleties of practice, but in a way it's pointing out what the mind does, and it gets so obvious, like, oh yeah, this mind does that. The way we think about things and the attitudes we bring to life and so on. So if you're interested in this, it's a 6-evening class. And I will encourage people to practice more. And my longing always is to induce people, you, to spend an hour a day in practice. Because I've seen what happens when people do that. Their lives change radically. That sounds like a lot, but of course, most of us, if you have an Apple phone, you can use that. There's an app now built in that can keep track of the hours you spend on it. Try it. Most of us have an hour a day to practice. Okay. I think that's all I will say about this. Let me see. We are so lucky to have each other in this place. A place to come and stop. And to learn how to be friends with each other. So, I invite you to participate, in volunteerism. We always need volunteers, and one of the things that I discovered early in my life, when I get involved somewhere new, if I do one thing volunteering, I belong, or the place belongs to me. So there's that volunteering opportunity that we have. And you can volunteer to spend a little time with the kids, or talk to Kirsten, who's our volunteer coordinator for the moment, soon to be off to new things in Boulder at the Naropa Institute. So, enough talk. Jim, would you like to do a little movement while I go play with the kids?
All right, here we are, standing up if you choose. I did a quick head count, and there's not 100 people here today. So that means I can do Shibashi too. It takes a little more space. So, when we set up for Shibashi of any sort, did I tell you that I found 7 Shibashi forms on the internet? That's embarrassing. Wow, it took a long time to find them. I was on my phone for a long time. Anyway, this is the way you start Shibashi 2. You lift and open. So it's a balancing of energy left and right with soft knees, soft shoulders, soft hands. You're not trying to force the energy into a new pattern. You're just nudging it into better balance, left and right. And there's this odd part of Qigong labeling that I haven't figured out yet, but anyway. The next step is bring your palms together and follow the microcosmic orbit, which means you come up the center line and you stay on the center line. So this is kind of like balancing the energy back and front. So we have this axis down the center of the body, and we have activities that take us off to the right, off to the left, sometimes forward, sometimes backward. And we're just breathing in and breathing out and feeling a balance that way. Then once we're balanced, we can dive into more variety. So we'll start with a step towards the street side and reach with your arm on the street side at the same time, and then back off and lift that street side toe and the opposite arm. So this is called the wind in the willow. So the wind is just carrying us over this direction and this direction. So there's no tension in the shoulders, no tension in the hips or the knees. The wind is just nudging us over here and nudging us over there. And then we step to the other side, towards the trees in the yard next door. Lifting the toe on that side. The wind is in the willows. We're just letting the wind blow through us. And then we'll come to a centered stance again for a moment, and then move the energy into the tree side of your body and stabilize with that leg, and then just relax the other leg and let it receive a blessing from your hands. So then we switch the weight to the other side and let the other side receive. We've got to keep things balanced. So balance on one side and stability and receiving on the other side. So this mindfulness can be precise and firm and strong, or it can be flowing, mindful of the flow of energy. But it's different on different sides of the body. I don't know how that happens. Robert was talking about mystery of awareness. There's one. So let's open our palms towards the trees and press. Turn the palms towards the street and press. This is called casting the nets. So it's like we're on a boat and we're throwing the nets off the side of the boat. And then we'll make a circle and take the street side leg and bring it back. So this is the spirit shows the way. We make a circle and point and then step backwards. So we're crossing the midline with the foot and the arms. And that's why I didn't want to do it with 100 people. Keep your fingers out of somebody else's ears, you know. Okay, now come back to that stability on one side and movement on the other. The movement this time is pressing the heel towards the floor. This is after the spirit shows the way, then the stubborn child in us plants its foot. I'm not going. There's an eightfold path, not for me. I'm not going. And then another step backwards. We'll turn towards the trees and bow. This is the crane bows to the moon, but it's a little bright for that, right? So we'll bow this way. Okay. So I told Robert it would be 10 minutes. His sense of time is terrible. My sense of time is terrible. So let the hands float up and press forward. And we're almost to the halfway point. So we're not going to finish this. But anyway, we'll go some more. This is the halfway point where we just pause and sink and just relax the shoulders, relax the wrists. This can be just like turning a windlass on a sailing ship, just turning the big gear. You have a soft fist. But so much of Qigong is based on animals. It's also the hawk pouncing, so you show your claws. But just for a second, it's like you open your fists and have some tension in it. Open your palms and have tension, but then release it. It was working. All right. Then we'll part the curtain. So all the weight goes over into, not all the weight, most of the weight goes into one leg, And we stretch across, glancing out the arm that's gesturing farther away. The other one is more tight to the body. It's not quite a pulling the bow kind of thing, but it's close. Parting the curtain. And then one of my favorite ones, where we bring the middle fingers in and create two dragons. And the idea is to really wring out all of the tendons and ligaments in the arms. So you begin with the dragons rising out of the sea, and then turn your palms over and let the dragons go back in. So you rise out of the sea and sink back in. Stepping towards the street, stepping towards the trees. Once more over here, and once more over there. So this second Shibashi form has a lot of stronger exertion, full breaths, lots of movement, and then it gets real quiet, and we just follow the waves across the sea. And this is the only place I get to do this with squeaky boards underneath. Okay, once more over here, and once more over here. Then we get more energetic again. To the side near the trees, we stabilize. Hold the ball with that, if that's your right hand, then put the right hand on top. Whatever the leg is that's stabilized, and lift the other knee and press towards the street. And then lift the other knee and press towards the trees. Okay, so let's just stand for a moment, opening the palms towards the earth and just feeling sensations in the body. Scanning the whole body from the tip of the toes to the crown of the head. Receptive, open to the influence of the earth. We've got all this chi circulating through our bodies, and there's chi circulating through the earth, so they get in harmony here. Then we sink and open the arms and get in touch with the heavens and bring that energy down. Feeling the harmonizing influence of the heavens from the crown of the head down to the soles of the feet. And then simple standing again, letting the arms relax, the weight of the body sinking into the soles of the feet and into the floor and into the earth below. So what part of the body is not alive? There's a flow of sensations through. On any point we turn our awareness to its living tissue. All right, thank you very much.
I wake up pretty early most mornings, 5:30 or so. Sunday mornings I wake up and I think, there's a lot of quiet for a while, and I think, so what should I speak about today? Sometimes it's really clear. This morning I was in the middle of that process, and I had a remembrance of something I had meant to say at the community meeting 2 Sundays ago or 3, which was that by a quick reckoning, I have come here on Sundays 750 times since we bought the building. And before that, there were decades. And so there's lots of Dharma talks. I can push a button and there's the Eightfold Path talk and the this talk and the that talk. And I was reflecting upon the responsibility of the role that we band together, and myself as a representative of the lineage of the Buddha, Ledi Sayadaw, U Ba Khin, Ruth Denison. There's this incredible body of teachings that part of my role is to share them with you. Another is to try to live by them as best I can. And I try generally to, when I meet with people during the week, if you want to meet with me, it's possible to make a half-hour meeting to come and sit with me, and you don't have to have it's just an opportunity to meet. We have a cup of tea, perhaps, and talk about your practice. So you'd talk to Avi to set that up. And so often I find I have what makes sense to speak about on Sunday come up with people during the week. It's particularly true on meditation retreats now, because the talks then fit the people on the retreat. And one theme that keeps coming up is how to live with some sense of balance in the middle of what seem like particularly turbulent times. And of course, the times have been turbulent for a long time in many places. Remember, I spoke not so long ago, and here, at the time of the Buddha's death, he had been for 30 years or so spending the rains retreat, in a particular place, a grove of trees, the Jetavana Grove. 30 years he'd been there for 3 months under the care of King Bimbisara. And King Bimbisara's son decided that it was time for the old man to go, and he killed him. There's a lot of that in world history, particularly true in Indian history around that time. And so he killed his father, and then he wasn't very fond of the Buddha, and told him to go. So here it is, the rainy season. The Buddha's 82 years old, not well, and the place where he has been sheltering for all these years is gone. Right? You would have thought, he should have a decent retirement after all this time. But no, and not only that there was war going on between the states that he was traveling through. And then the whole thing happened with his falling ill, eating some bad food, bad meat, and then died of food poisoning. He said, his last words were pretty interesting. Take the Dharma as your refuge, take no other refuge, make of yourself a light. And he had refused to say who would be his successor, which created a mess, actually. So we're living in difficult times. Difficult externally. Difficult. This I'm aware of a certain when the fabric of the culture seems to be tearing, and when speaking ill of each other and polarizing is becoming more normative, it's scary. It's like mom and dad are fighting, sort of scary. So there's that, and that's on top of the normal difficulties of our lives. In one of my ongoing groups, we're reading the book. It's called Everyday Trauma. It's a book by Mark Epstein. And he articulates very nicely how much it is that we're dealing with. And we tend to think that, I'm the one who's, it's because of something I did or because of the parents I had or something, but that it's we tend to be isolated in our struggle. And it's funny. Let's just try this. Please raise your hand if you're experiencing some part or parts of your life right now to be really difficult and confusing. Look around. Get it together. Right? You must not be meditating enough. Raise your hand. That's very touching to me. Wow, makes me feel a little teary. How about this? Please raise your hand if this is one of the most difficult periods of your life. So that's a lot of us. There's an element in the Buddha's life that in modern times has been brought out more. But his mother died in childbirth. And he was raised by his mother's sister, his aunt. And as we know now from modern psychological studies, having one's mother die young has an impact. We're so vulnerable as little babies that, and it's not a cognitive impact. It's not that how could we didn't have any ego at all. But there's this Because I've worked with a fair number of people over the years who've had early loss. That early loss sets something off in us, that there's a longing, there's sometimes an anguish that we wind up trying to heal for the rest of our lives. I know in my own case I didn't have that, but my mother was, when she was 6, her mother died in childbirth. And my mother was sent to the convent, basically sent to an orphanage. And was there till she was 16. And the nuns were not particularly warm and fuzzy. We visited the big old gray building in Ottawa, Canada, which was then, maybe still is, the Chinese consulate, Chinese embassy. And she said that 3rd floor up, that was my window, and she spent 16 hours a day in that cubicle. That was her spot. And in my adulthood, in my whole life, my mother always sat by the kitchen window looking out. When I came home, thousands of times on my bicycle, in the car, there was my mom. Always. She was agoraphobic. Mm-hmm. So, all of that said, there was a time in my therapy where I was raging about how cold my mother was. And the therapists supported that period of my development. And then at a certain point said, seems like she did a pretty good job given her training. How much warm and fuzzy did she get? And so that sense of not wanted, or not enough nourishment, or the world is hard or something, that's carried over. It's still around down there. And in one way or another, I presume that's true for every single one of us, right? There's losses and wounds that we've had from the beginning, or very early. And the question arises, how can my meditation help with this? Somewhere in my pictures, I have a gorgeous image that I got off the internet of a young mother with her baby in the gaze, and they're one consciousness. And we need that. We need at least enough of that. Fortunately, there's a lot of redundancies, so it doesn't need to be perfect, but there's a term that's used that's called good enough. If we don't get good enough holding, our needs being taken care of, then we're left kind of anxious. One of the things that meditation allows us to do is to enlist the Buddha, Kuan Yin, enlist non-judgmental awareness. I aspire to love and accept myself exactly as I am in this moment. We enlist that capacity of being present. And that's the healing. It may not undo all the psychological, emotional trauma and the personality structures. Probably, well, it doesn't. My own experience is that it doesn't undo it. But to come to a different relationship with it is really possible. So that's a fair piece beyond stress management. And this is a really remarkable practice for stress management. To take 20 minutes or 30 minutes once a day and just sit and do what we were doing here for the first part of the session, We can learn to lower our blood pressure. We can learn normalization of all kinds of bodily systems. When people begin meditating half an hour or more a day, if you're on insulin, it makes sense to start paying a little closer attention, or various other medications, because one's stress level does go down. It has a huge. This is not metaphorical. This has all been researched now to the nth degree. Similarly, when we start meditating with some frequency, we inevitably, who ran into a familiar old psychological pattern this morning? Look around. Stop it. Right? There's a very funny Bob Newhart skit. Look on YouTube for Bob Newhart, Stop It. I won't tell you about it, but it's really, it's the antithesis of what we're doing here. So if we practice with some frequency and duration, we do wind up holding our woundedness in love and compassion. And nobody else can do that. We can learn a lot from a loving partner, or a loving therapist, or a loving teacher. I am infinitely grateful to several people in this lifetime who have loved me and loved parts of myself that I couldn't love. Ruth Denison certainly did that on several occasions, and I've had several wise elders in the form of therapists who I would be busy judging myself, and they would maybe point out, that's kind of extraneous software. So we come to meditation, and it's so important then in our meditation that we actually be practicing in a way that has a lot of love and compassion in it. Because if we're practicing with, what's wrong with me, I can't control my mind, or here's that same stupid pattern, then we just, nothing happens. So it's one of the reasons, again, I'm talking about sitting for a little while, for long enough, and maybe also coming on a retreat or going to a retreat somewhere, because then we get to see the emergence and the repetition of mood states, and when I asked that first question of, are you struggling with something really significant in your life? Obviously, this is normal human lives. We humans, because of birth, sickness, old age, decay, death, because experiences arise that we don't want to have, and the ones that we do want to have don't arise, and we wind up with people we don't want to be with, and when we wind up missing our beloveds. And add to that, everything is always changing. Changing. And to the degree that we have a belief that it shouldn't be doing that, or she or he shouldn't be doing that, then we suffer mightily, on top of the disappointments and the hurt and the sickness and the I don't think I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be ready, but I don't think I'm ready to give up following the news, even though I don't think it helps me at all. But, they're doing it again. Everyone's arguing and fighting and calling each other names, and they're not teaching love very much. And some of the people that that mirror my values significantly, they're not being very loving either. And maybe I'm looking in the wrong place to find loving, kind people. Maybe that's just what that game is. Question then is, how loving can I be toward that and toward them? And when some piece of news comes in that is offensive, and then the jazzing up happens inside myself, and they this and they shouldn't do that, I've lost my own spaciousness. And so I'm struggling, working with that issue. Less struggle than it used to be. I'm not sure, because it's a long time ago, 50 years. But I think I was in that Catholic church that was blown up in Sri Lanka. Maybe not, but I think so. So, I mean, on the other hand, it doesn't matter, so what? But I know when Notre Dame burned, I had a big transpersonal experience in Notre Dame. I was there, I was in Europe I'd lived there for a couple of years, and I was there setting up a lecture tour for my narcissistic personality guru fellow that I was with for 5 years. And I was alone and lonely in Europe, and I was sitting in one of the front pews in Notre Dame, and this tremendous sense of okayness and spaciousness happened. And when I saw the fire, it immediately took me back to that. It's like, that spot. Oh no, that spot's burning. But it's going to fall down sometime, burn down. So, I guess this is a talk about having mercy for ourselves and for each other. And maybe when we're together, to find someone or ones with whom we can really be honest and say, I'm really struggling, right? It's really hard being in my feet, my shoes right now, because it is for almost all of us. How difficult intimate relationships are, right? How difficult having children is, having grandchildren is. I had a friend, I wonder if it was Jim. The sign of a grandparent is deep bite marks in the tongue. You know that one? So this is one of the reasons we band together on a Sunday morning to do this practice. I'll share with you what I shared with Jim early when we got here, when we were connecting with each other. This morning, after a while, I got up out of bed and I went and sat on the couch for quite a long time. Very spacious. It was like, oh yes, good. I don't know what the talk will be yet, but this is the space of intuition out of which it comes. And then I had some breakfast, and I had some allergic reaction to something, and contracted, and there was a sense of malaise and oh no, I have to go teach. And then I got to my office and I sat for 20 minutes, which is what I tend to do when I'm feeling crappy. And then consciousness opened up again. It's so unpredictable. I mean, there is some predictability that if we take the time to just be, then the warming up toward to be, and also to turn to where the hurting is. right? It's not to be and distract myself on my phone, but to be and notice, allergies are really tough. Who in this room suffers from allergies? Wow, it's a lot. It's tough. I had such severe, what they call it, hay fever, autumn allergies. I missed the first week of school sometimes in Montreal. So much stuffy and sneezing, and bless my parents, they tried all kinds of things. We got a electrostatic filter, and I did shots and magic potions and things, but it was tough, and the depression that came with it was really hard too, because the system is in uproar. So to go to your spot and to have the Dharma be your refuge, and to be able to then turn into the symptoms and realize, so here are the symptoms. Here's this emotion, here is this mood, here is this familiar old conflict. And to turn toward it, and I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in that which knows this, and that knows the reactivity to it. And then there's some peace, there's the opening door. That making sense? It's the paradigm of awakening. So, that's what that came up to speak about, and I want to invite anyone to share what you wish about that or anything else. You could ask a question if you want. The Buddha has microphone. When you use it, you speak directly into it, and it works like this. And we could also just sit here in silence. That'd be nice too. I wanted to say one thing more about the permit department in Portland, Oregon. There's a way that they can get pretty picayune and problematic. There's another way that it's really great to live in a place where, in general, buildings don't suddenly fall down because there haven't been permits and there haven't been inspections, which we get the news of it every now and then, but in Bangladesh, a building collapsed, killing X number of people, or that we have this permit department because the intention, at least, and significantly, is to protect us. Please share your name. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kimberly. And my question is, so you shared about having an allergic reaction and your body goes into a certain place, which we all are familiar with. Something happens in our body, we don't feel well, and our mind goes with that. And sometimes the depression that comes along, for me, goes hand in hand with when I'm feeling ill. but I can't, if in your example, you kind of came to this place, maybe the allergy lessened and in 20 minutes or so you were able to go back into your space. When you have something that's chronic, and there are times when I can naturally move into my meditation and openness about life and positivity, and the world looks different, and then something happens physically in my body and the world feels very dark and very different. And I can't always unravel myself from that in my mind. And so I'm wondering and I do practice daily, suggestions of how you or other people take that darkened body and mental space and get back to the awareness and alertness.
What you just said makes me realize that the way that I said what I did implied that I can always get out of it. And that's not true. There are momentary challenging states and longer visits, and sometimes challenging states move into our lives for a long time. And sometimes life circumstances arise where, we have a really bad illness, or we're caring for a loved one who has a terrible illness, or one of our children winds up in a psych unit or something. And it would be a mistake to construe that we're always going to be able to find a place of feeling light-hearted and spacious and at ease. I think that sometimes really the best we can do is to turn into that anguish, physical pain, emotional pain, and abide there and recognize it as the human condition. And in that, do less lashing out and less suffering, because we're not trying to pretend that this kind of horrible circumstance can be transcended. But there is vastly less suffering, in my experience, when there's the realization that this is how it is. And I have a little story. In 2000, I was hiking in the mountains with my daughter, and we slept out on top of Old Snowy Mountain in the Goat Rocks Wilderness. And in the morning, we got up and we were coming down and doing the plunge step through snow, and I had a heavy pack. She was 13, she's now 32. And I slipped on some dirt. It wasn't even, I slipped and my right leg jammed and my quadriceps tendon tore off. It just went bam! And I thought it was my femur that broke. 2 screams came out. And actually, you can read the story of this on portlandinsight.org or robertbeatty.com. It's called The Swish of a Horse's Tail. Fortune changes like the swish of a horse's tail. It's quite a good read. I wrote it completely flying on painkillers. 3 or 4 days after the surgery. So anyway, I got pulled out of the mountains on the Black Hawk helicopter. It took hours, and finally someone got a phone call out, and in came the chopper. And the handsome young man came down on his cable and stuck an IV in and whisked me up. And 20 minutes later, I was in Madigan Hospital. It was a miracle. They left Tara. They wouldn't bring Tara. And she got to come out. It was a 2-day hike out. She learned a lot about fundamentalist Christianity with that family. It was actually, she looks back on it gratefully. It was quite interesting. They were nice people. Very nice. So anyway, after the roaring pain of the event, and once it was splinted, there wasn't much pain. The orthopedic surgeon said, the pain will come after the surgery. And he was right. It was bad. And so I was bedridden, and I never read the papers. And I was getting terrible allergic itching reactions, very burning itches, but I didn't know that wasn't right, and I was pretty out there. And the day, you'd notice this if you read the article, the day of the event, I experienced this spacious, loving consciousness. People were all around me, and I was a little shocky, but I had so much gratitude. And this bird came flying in and pulled me up. I was just, it was a day of loving kindness. It was so beautiful. And so I thought, well, isn't this wonderful? And that's part of why I wrote the article, was this is a way to use meditation when you are in danger or injured. One of the things I did was, when she left to get help, I was alone, and I had a moment of terror, starting to, I'm alone. And then it occurred to me I could do Tonglen practice, a practice from the Tibetans, where one reflects that other people in the world have had or are having this experience, and you breathe in their suffering with yours, and then you breathe it back out as loving kindness. And it was remarkable. As I did it, actually, I had this flash of all the people who've had their legs blown off, and the number of people who've been hiking and died because they broke their leg or whatever. Anyway, post-surgery, medicated badly, awake in the night, and I'd taken the maximum plus of the medication I was allowed to take, and the pain was bad. And I remembered back to India when I had kidney stones and I'd managed to have enough concentration, I could kind of separate myself from the pain, and well, this wasn't happening. And I'd listen to the news. I'd distract myself as much as I could till 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And then this is all there is. There's just this grinding pain and no distraction. The distractions just weren't working. And the practice, and I would realize I can't take any medication for another 4 hours. What can I do? And the practice that worked was the realization, I wonder how many other people on the planet are having this. And then the thought was, this is the human condition. This happens to human beings, and I'm experiencing this. And it was just, all right, it's kind of like from my Catholic childhood, thy will be done. This is how it is. And it was awful, but that extra added, why me, and it shouldn't be like this, that kind of faded away, and then the hours would pass, but it was tough. And of course, compared to some of the things I have known that people have gone through, that was small potatoes. So sometimes I think this practice is really just about remaining compassionate with ourselves and not adding in that second arrow of, it shouldn't be like this. It is like this. And it's normal for human beings to go through horrors like that. So, any help?
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you.
I wish I could just meditate and go, oh, here I am, and oh, I'm in my transpersonal state now, yes.
Yeah. Sometimes I still have the Hollywood view of it and life, and
Right.
everyone else has, everyone else looks happy and content and not in pain. And yeah.
There is, and I always go this way with trepidation, because some people say this is a Buddhist community. I don't want to hear any of the Christian stuff. But there is a classic, beautiful image of this in the crucifixion of Jesus. Here he is. He's nailed to the. My supposition is, for some time he's been realizing, I am the universe. Right? I really am everything. We get stuck in these little selves, but who we really are is the vast universe that's taken birth as this. Oh, good, I'm this. And then he gets nailed on the cross, and it hurts. And he contracts down into his frightened little self, and he's, what the hell? It's like, why now? And then the line, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. It's contraction, and then, well, here I am here. Okay. I just noticed, when I asked you all to put up your hands if you're going through some really significant challenge in your life right now, I didn't expect it to be so many. My own delusion. It's touching. One of the things that I do on my meditation retreats is once a day or once every other day, I pass a talking object, and I offer people 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes to speak what's true. Not crosstalk, just what are you experiencing? And what happens through that over the course of 12 days in Nelson, British Columbia, is the trust level goes skyrocketing. And the thing, what's really interesting is that one day someone will be realizing, oh, I had this terrible abuse in my childhood that I never felt before. And the next day, they'll be, oh, such bliss today. And then, because it makes it, the fact of its temporariness, of what's up in the moment, makes that very obvious. Quite remarkable. Speaking of that, I should invite you. Why not take off from July the 7th to the 18th and come and spend 12 days, I think that's the dates, come and spend 12 days in meditation in Nelson, BC. It's really a beautiful opportunity. Anybody here that's done that? Christine, yeah. Oh, and of course, David. So any other question, comment? We have some more time. How rich today. Connie, please.
Oftentimes you talk about Siddhartha's life, the Buddha's life, and I was finding myself the other day trying to find more research about it. I also am the type of person that learns more from audio and video. Is there any thing you would recommend?
I don't know
about his
audio.
life?
I don't know if you've heard my 1.5-hour story about the life of the Buddha. That exists.
Yes, many times.
But
yeah.
I don't know beyond that. But there's several biographies of the Buddha. One, what's it called? The word? I forget what it's called. I'll think of it and tell you. It's what comes out of the Pali Canon as the Buddha's life.
Okay, thank you.
It was a pretty rough life. 2 attempts on his life. Several attempts at scandal. It was rough. And most people who met him were unimpressed. Or a lot of people. That's an interesting thing too. It wasn't like everyone who met him said, oh, here's this really terrific awakened guy. I was like, I don't believe that crap, right? Take away my phone, forget it. Connie, back there.
Steele, thank you. I just really appreciate that foundation of love and compassion. It's such a beautiful space to be in. Thank you.
As the teachings invite us to be with ourselves, no matter what our experience is, that's the training for being with others who are really hurting. Because just as we can't in many circumstances take away the pain in ourselves, we can be compassionately present with that pain rather than fighting it. And the same we can do with others, that they can be we can be sitting with them in their hospital bed or on the couch or wherever we are, and to be able to tolerate the discomfort, to tolerate their discomfort without having to pull away. What a present, what a gift that is, right? I can really hear how sad you are, right? Or, yep, that hopelessness really sucks. Or, wow, you're happy today and I'm getting off on it. Or, how wonderful your child got into the school they wanted. Or, oh, great, good news on that medical report. Let's celebrate. So it isn't just the difficult side. It's love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, the Brahma Viharas, the really wholesome emotions. And so when someone's really happy, why not support that happiness and delight in the contact high? Hello, Tom.
At the risk of sounding hokey, but this is something that's worked for me. I'm sort of a simple person, I guess, but I have this acronym, KFC. Does anybody recognize that?
Yes, of course.
And so what happens in my life, I'll run into a circumstance that's not going my way. I take the arrow and I hit myself again with condemnation and all that. And so kindness, forgiveness, and compassion comes to mind. I think, oh, KFC, I like KFC. Oh, and then I sort of, I don't know, that's it's sort of down to earth for me.
You've completely reframed fried chicken. Thanks. Thank you, Tom. Kindness, forgiveness, and compassion. Well, we have the little ones in the chute, so I invite you to make a big circle. Thank you for being here today. And let's join together in a little ritual of ending. Bump. Nice socks. You could come and sit in the circle. Why don't you come and join us? You're only. Well, come in, join us in the circle. Oh, Here, we're gonna make a circle here with the little kids. It's a real privilege to be in the center. Hi. All right, we're good. Hi. Any of you posing as grown-ups can join us at any time to let your true child nature come to the center. So, may I hold your hand? Thank you. May I hold your hand? Thank you. You're left out. Can some... Yay. Thank you. Well, did you have a nice time this morning? Yes? Good. Thank you for being you amongst the children. You're welcome. So let's become aware of our bodies. What a remarkable thing to have a human body. Capable of so many things, and a human mind capable of giving the hand on your right a little squeeze and think a kind thought for them. What would that be if you were really generous? And then the person on your left giving that hand a little squeeze. It's a nice practice. And then offering this some prayer or wish to everyone in your circle, the little circle, the bigger circle. And then extending this out beyond here to the people in the houses around us. Maybe it's true that we are all one manifestation of a single consciousness, in which case, why would we not love each other? So extending this loving, compassionate blessing to the people with great power in the world, to the powerless, to those being born and those that are dying, to all of our relations, those of the sky, the earth and the waters, on this planet and in every place where life and consciousness have emerged. And now, are you ready? Yeah? Good. I can't wait. There we go. Test one. All right. There you go. Get close. 1, 2, 3.
May all beings be happy. May all beings
be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. Nice cooperation. So, the ancient ritual of the wish. What would your deepest wish be? And those of you at home, be articulate. What is it? What is it you'd like to wish for? And then taking in a huge breath, and I will count. 1, 2, 3, blow. Blow, 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 blow. Yes, we did it. Hooray! Thank you, dear friends. Please have a lovely day. And turn to your neighbor and say hello. And come and join us for coffee and tea. Goodbye. Goodbye. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining the circle.